Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ari and Big Mike are proud to present the greatest podcast in the world. No snowflakes allowed, and summer is coming.
We did that on one take. I want to tell you how rare that is. It is the podcast that was started by two guys on cigar night.
Ain't that the truth? But you know what? Listen, every episode we're getting better. You know, and I want to point something out to all y'all out here listening. Like, I've gotten some comments, I've gotten some private, some public. Like, I'm listening to them, and I'm working on trying to get this to be a better podcast every day. So, it's just going to take some time.
Okay. One of our commenters on YouTube said that he's going to start a drinking game for every time Mike says you know.
You know? You know?
Okay, I'm not going to drink that much. That's only water, but still.
All right, it's all good. So, here we got a good one for today. I'm excited. You want to set us up and, let's get it going.
All right. The Cavalry will not be coming. People looking for easy answers. And when we discuss the hard problems of our society, easy answers are very, very difficult to come by. For example, you see people who are lonely, or you see people who are struggling with life, see people who are homeless and out on the street, you see a mass shooting or whatever, and the answer you hear from people discussing the issue is always the same. We need more mental health treatment. We need more mental health care in this country. And no matter how you slice it, the Cavalry is not coming. There are no easy answers, and we're going to discuss why that is.
Okay, well, I kind of have a disagreement on that one already. There are easy answers. It's that putting them into practice is difficult. I will give you a perfect example. I am fat. I am overweight. I need to drop 100 pounds. That's a given. Anyone who sees me, they know it. They're not stupid. How do you lose weight healthily? You eat right, a proper diet, and you exercise. You get enough sleep, and then we do the same thing daily. We rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Really, can we not do that? When I'm being serious, can we not do that?
All right.
Right, but no, I'm serious.
Okay.
It's like it's not that complex. It is not complex at all on how to lose weight. And you know what? And I'm sorry. I see a lot of excuses in this world today. I have a glandular disorder. I have this. I have that. And you know what? There are some people with disorders. I saw this video on YouTube, and there was pictures of 100 years ago. Of cities 100 years ago, like Vienna, London, Paris, New York, all sorts of things, all cities, a whole bunch of cities all over the place. And I was looking at it, and it was gorgeous to see what these cities looked like 100 years ago. But as I'm looking at it, I'm scratching my belly, and I realized, as I'm scratching my belly, that I don't really see any bellies there. Like, nobody was fat. It was like, so all of a sudden we have glandular disorders, but wait, 100 years ago they didn't. So now I start thinking even further about that. Well, why are we having glandular disorders if we, for some people, and the rest of us are just fat? Well, first off, they walked way more than we do. They ate way healthier food. Everything was organic. There were no chemicals 100 years ago like that. It's like, so we're eating healthier, we're exercising more. Just in our daily lives, they didn't need gyms because people were just moving and doing more. So now, okay, great. So a lot of those glandular disorders are brought on by chemicals, right? The chemicals that we put into our system, whether we're talking about big farm, whether we're talking about commercial products that we eat. Like, I go and I take a kernel of rice, and somehow I turn it into a Rice Krispie, which is when I mix it with a marshmallow, and next thing you know, I got Rice Krispie treats. Well, what are the chemicals in that? If you look and you see, and when you're reading the ingredient list on something, if you can't pronounce something, why are you eating it? If you don't know what it is, why are you eating? Why? Because it's delicious. But see, here's the thing though. Those chemicals are designed to make you to want to eat more. So that's why when we're eating all this processed food, it's ridiculous. And not only that, bread is supposed to go stale in a day. Like, if you make fresh bread, it's stale in a day. But yet, somehow or another, we have loaves that won't go moldy for 3 weeks. So now, what are you eating there? Oh my God, more preservatives, more chemicals. Guess what? It's now taking the body at least 10 to 20 times as long to decompose when we die than it did beforehand. Why? Because of all the crap we're eating, which has an effect on our mental health, our physical health, emotional, spiritual, because we're just not putting in proper products into our body.
You talk about how people, 100 years ago were thinner and better dressed for also, but by the same token, they really were a lot less healthy than people are today. I mean, these people would go to jobs in these awful factories, and they would do these awful repetitive tasks, wear out their joints. Before the Pure Food and Drug Act, there is so much more spoiled food and unwholesome food that was going into the food pipeline that people ate, and it caused them to be unhealthy in many, many ways that weren't visible on a photograph. Further, you see these people on the streets walking around looking thin and proper and whatever, and housing back then was nowhere near what we have today, so that they would go back to a room full of various other people. It wasn't too long ago that several families who just moved into this country would share a bathroom, an unhygienic bathroom, causing all sorts of health issues like that. So you go back and look how people lived 100 years ago, and we've made great strides. Some things have gotten worse, some things have gotten better, but you can't look back and say that there was some time when things were that much better than they are now. I mean, things really have improved. The question is, how much more can they improve?
Well, I mean, listen, let's go back over the last 500 years. Let's talk a little food history for us. We didn't have refrigeration for most of it. So each society developed different ways in how to deal with food preservation. I'll give you some examples. One, look at French cuisine. It is loaded with sauces. That's how they covered up their rotted meat. They would cook things till they were thoroughly well done, and then they would sauce everything. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way was pickling. Another way was drying out the meats, like making biltong or or beef jerky. You had for instance, a lot of people would do is they would make preserves. Now, without refrigeration, how would you keep the preserves? What they would then do is they would make a ton of butter and then clarify it, right? And after clarifying the butter, then they would pour the clarified butter on top of the preserves in the jar, and then when the butter solidified, it would make an airtight seal, which then would keep preserves for at least a year. They would salt meat, salted pork, salted beef, those types of things, to take all the liquid out of it. You would make these biscuits that the sailors would, go on for hundreds of years, that they would cook them until they were like bricks, right? And they have all sorts of recipes where they'd rehydrate them to make it edible. But it's that's what we had to do for food preservation. We had to do so many things. Fresh meat was a rarity, but salted was what everybody had, and you had ways of unsalting the meat and reconstituting liquid into these things, and we had all sorts of things that we had to do so we didn't spoil. Yes, there have been improvements. I am not going to deny that, but the quality of the food that they ate was much better than what we ate.
Although I still think that a lot of the food, especially if it got spoiled or whatever, left people radically, or not only just spoiled, but if it was like a monotonous diet of white flour and otherwise unvaried and processed foods, all of a sudden, people are radically vulnerable to a lot of diseases that have been wiped out. It wasn't just vaccines that wiped out those diseases. It was also an increase in general health. But to bring us back to our original topic, now that our general health has gotten better in a wide variety of ways, we're still struggling with people not having a place or people otherwise in need of mental health treatment. And when people say, they just give this glib answer, oh, we got to improve the mental health system or whatever, it just seems that they're using, it's almost like they're hoping for a miracle. And let me explain why I think that's something that would be a miracle. Donald Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense, in describing why in describing what we're going to do in going into Iraq. He says, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you might want or wish to have at a later time. So if people are going to if we're going to solve this crisis in mental health, we're going to need a lot of trained professionals, or so we think. We might need a large army of trained professionals. But unfortunately, you go to war, in this case a war on mental illness or whatever, with the army that you have. And the army that we do have at this point is not big enough. It might not be trustworthy and well-trained enough to lick the enemy. For example, the American Psychological Association has come out with statements talking about how certain traits of masculinity are toxic. And that just doesn't seem like the kind of statement that a trustworthy institution would make.
So, I mean, listen, I remember dealing with the DSM-4. And for those who don't know, it's this diagnostic manual that you deal with the insurance companies. That's, so you have to label what everything is. That's a big issue, the fact that we have to label everything now. It's like, used to be if a man was hurting, they would say he's sad and he's hurt, or he's hurting, he's suffering a loss or something. And it made it a lot easier to get over, because now all of a sudden, he's not suffering from depression. He's like he was hurting. There are people who have serious clinical depression. That's a given. There always have been. If you look back at history, we have always had issues with mental health. You go back and you see many different characters throughout history. For instance, like I'll give you a famous one, Shabtai Tzvi. That man was bipolar. I am fully convinced of that. And it's like he had his manic episodes where everybody thought he was the Messiah, and it was great. But then he had depressives.
Just to explain about who the Shabtai Tzvi that Mike just mentioned, he was a charismatic figure from the mid-1600s, and he proclaimed that he was the Messiah, and he attracted many, many followers among the Jewish people, and he was a complete fraud.
And not only that, he caused a big cataclysm in the whole system. He really caused a lot of damage. But he's not the only one. Thomas Jefferson for sure was bipolar. It's like.
But he did great things in terms of bringing our country into what it is.
I understand that he did great things, but listen, whether evil or good, both of them did great things. That's the point. The point is that the mental health is important, but also how we live is important. Like how much do we really fight for that simple answer. Because usually the simplest answer is the correct one, right? That's, it's Occam's razor there. And what we're finding is that we're trying to overcomplicate everything for a reason. Now, this is only the first part of a 3-part series, folks. So we're going to pause it here and, follow us up on the next video. I want to thank you all for listening. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and all the best wherever you are.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time and attention.